everyone, welcome back. I'm Cole Phillips, author of The Adventure of the Twisted Truths and host of The Book and Dagger, the YouTube channel where we talk about everything and anything fiction and fantasy. Today, I would like to do a video discussing my personal favorite prophecy in all fiction and fantasy. For me, now a lot of people will argue that there are a lot of different arguments to be made for a lot of people's favorite or best prophecy, and it's the journey to it being fulfilled across many different shows and books. For me personally, though, I think the best written prophecy that has ever been written in all fiction and fantasy is the prophecy of how the Dragon Reborn will seal the hole in the Dark One's prison in the Wheel of Time. And so I'll just go and get right into it. There will be spoilers in this, by the way. If you have not read the Wheel of Time, there are going to be some massive spoilers for the ending of the Wheel of Time, and also throughout the books. But I'll just go ahead and start it by saying that if you're not familiar with the Wheel of Time, the main premise of the book is the main character, Randall Thor, is the Dragon Reborn. He is Louis Theron Telamon, reborn to fight the Dark One and save the world. Now, in the books, Rand starts out as this mere shepherd, this mere farm boy, and eventually, not too long into it, he discovers that he is in reality Louis Theron reborn, a man who can channel the one power, destined to go mad, save the world, and break it, as the prophecies say. Now, to prepare for his fight with the Dark One, once Rand accepts who he is, he knows that he needs to gather allies and weapons, because the Dark One is this cosmic being who, if he broke out of his prison, could destroy everything. And he has very powerful followers, and a lot of them. So throughout the books, a lot of the books is Rand going around collecting people groups and fulfilling prophecies and gathering nations to him for support, and just him going around just getting as ready as he can for the fight with the Dark One in the last battle. Now, he also studies exclusively the prophecies of the dragon, or the Koreathon cycle. He studies those very in depth, looking for clues on ways for him to defeat the Dark One. And he finds that in the prophecies of the dragon, mentioned very prominently in them is Kalendor, the sword that is not a sword, a very powerful sa'angreal that only a man can wield, and it can only be drawn from its resting place by the Dragon Reborn. Now, a sa'angreal is a item of the one power that, with it, you can draw in much more of the one power than you usually could. See, in the Wheel of Time, men and women, they have different people who wield the one power. They have different levels to them. Like, there are some more powerful than others. It depends on how much of the one power you can draw in from the true source before you burn yourself out or kill yourself. Rand, of course, is much more powerful than anybody else. He can draw in way more of the one power than basically anybody else. But the Dark One is a very insanely powerful being. So Rand needs all the help he can get. So he fulfills in the book 3. He fulfills a prophecy. He goes to the Stone of Tyr, and he takes from it Kalendor, the sword that is not a sword, because it looks like a sword, but it's all crystal and glass, and it's a sa'angreal, so it allows him to draw in insane amounts of the one power. Kalendor is the second most powerful sa'angreal, bested only by the Cho'odon Call, which I'll actually talk about in a later video. Or maybe I'll talk about it a little bit today if I can fit in the time. But anyway, so Kalendor is mentioned heavily in the prophecies. It's called the sword that is not a sword, the sword that cannot be touched. Prophecies say the Stone of Tyr will not fall until the dragon comes. And it's mentioned also very heavily that it'll be used in the last battle. One of the prophecies says he will hold the sword of light in his hands, and Kalendor is it glitters like a sword of light. And when the one power is drawn through it, it glows. So it is very much a sword of light. So Rand, he thinks, okay, this is great. I mean, it's the third book. He's got this very powerful object that even the Forsaken will be afraid to. Like, Rand is still very experienced at this point, but Kalendor is so powerful that even the Forsaken will be kind of just hesitant to face him while he has it. But along the way, they kind of discover, as he's journeying, he discovers Kalendor can be very addicting. Like, it's very addictive. The sheer power he can draw through it is very addicting. And also, Kalendor does not have a limiter on it. Most sa'angreal have a limiter to keep you from burning yourself out. Kalendor does not have that. So Rand sticks the stone or sword back in the stone and weaves wards around it until he can figure out how to use it fully later. However, as several of the books go by, some of his friends and others, they do some digging in the prophecies and such, and then Rand also discovers that, and they discover there is a fatal flaw in Kalendor. So while Kalendor can only be wielded by a man and the one power can only be drawn into it by a man, he discovers that Kalendor was meant to be used by men and women to get that kind of cap to keep you from burning yourself out. Its full potential can only be reached when one man is wielding it and two women are in a circle with them and a woman is leading the circle. If it is not a full circle, the man leaves himself vulnerable because two women can basically insert themselves into it and take control of the man. So Rand finds this out and he's like, okay, this is a pretty big flaw. I don't want to be using this at the last battle when women, like, he's like, well, I don't really want to be using it at all, because Rand is kind of going through this phase where he doesn't trust almost any of the Aes Sedai women. So Rand kind of doesn't use Kalendor for a while. And but Min, his lover, and Catswain, kind of a not really mentor, I want to say, but someone who tries to guide him along the right path. They're doing digging into Kalendor and they're looking at the prophecies. And the prophecy says he will hold a sword of light in his hand, and the three will become one to eventually vanquish the Dark One. So Rand is kind of sitting there, and at this point in the book series, I was sitting there like, huh. In one book they're sitting there and they're like, what does the three will become one mean? And I was sitting there like, I bet what it means is that Rand will have to trust two Aes Sedai with his life. Like, it'll have to be them in a circle in order to defeat the Dark One. And then a couple books in, Min and some others, they actually like, okay, well, it must mean that he and two women have to link. Like, the three, their power will have to become one in the sword to defeat the Dark One. I was like, okay, yeah, they got it. However, it gets to the final battle. And Rand, he gets Moiraine and Nynaeve, probably the two Aes Sedai he trusts the most, because he doesn't trust a lot, but he trusts those two with his life. Rand takes Moiraine and Nynaeve to Shale Ghul. And right outside the Dark One's prison, he faces off with Moradin, and Rand is holding Kalendor. Moradin just has a normal sword. Moradin and Rand, they fight. And they're sword fighting there outside the Dark One's prison where the boar is, so that Rand has to seal. And as they're fighting, see, there's a link between Moradin and Rand. I'm not going to go too much into those details. Basically, there's a link. And Moradin cuts his hand and causes the link. Rand basically drops Kalendor because Rand can feel Moradin's pain. And so Moradin cuts his hand and Rand drops Kalendor. And Moradin grabs it and is like, haha, I've got Kalendor. And he then realizes that the true power, the Dark One's power, can be amplified through it. So Moradin grabs Kalendor and sucks the true power through it into himself. Moradin does not, however, know about the fatal flaw in Kalendor, and that is when Moiraine and Nynaeve take control of Moradin. And with them controlling Moradin, Rand channels saidin, Nynaeve and Moiraine channel saidar, and then they take control of Moradin and they have him channel the true power. Now remember, when Lewis, if you know anything about the Wheel of Time, when Lewis Theron tried to seal the boar, it was just him and Men and saidin, and they touched saidin to the Dark One, and just that act tainted the entire male half of the true source. Now Rand has cleansed the male half of the true source, so by this time it is clean. However, he knows that if they touch saidin and saidar to the Dark One, it is going to taint both halves, and that could be very catastrophic for the entire world. So they take control of Moradin and they have him weave the binding on the Dark One's prison with the true power. And basically it coats saidin and saidar so that they can weave the binding, seal the boar without touching saidin and saidar to the Dark One's prison itself. And I remember just driving along, and as they were saying that, it popped in my head, and I went, the three will become one. The true power and the saidin and saidar, the two halves of the one power. The three became one and sealed the Dark One's prison. I was so excited because I always thought, oh, three become one. Two women ran, channeling their power into Kalendor. It had never occurred to me that they would use the true power, the Dark One's own power, to seal his prison. And I remember I was just driving. I was going to the gas station or something. I was driving, listening to the audiobook, and I was stopped at a light, and then it started. It that whole scene played out. I was so excited. I was like, if I had not been in my car, I would have been jumping up and down. Like I was ecstatic. That is like I was so excited. 14 books and listening to this prophecy over and over, and it paid off. Like there was just fewer. Like I've rarely felt more excited over something that happened in fiction than that. And I believe that is a testament just to how good the Wheel of Time series is and how well they do prophecy. Because there are other prophecies in the Wheel of Time that are done phenomenal. And so if you have not read the Wheel of Time, I highly recommend you go check it out. It is an amazing book series. And if you have read the Wheel of Time, I hope you really enjoyed this video, and I hope you too, when you read that part, were super excited. If you have only watched the Wheel of Time TV show, I please read the books because the books are so good. Now that the TV show has been canceled, I think you should really go check out the books just to see how great they are. How much I'm kind of biased here, how much better they are than the TV show. But yeah, that's why I think the Wheel of Time has the greatest prophecy ever. It made me the most excited I've ever been when a prophecy was fulfilled. So yeah, if you guys let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.